What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So this is the iPhone 12 mini, and for a lot of you, this is probably the iPhone you've been waiting for. Now, I do want to make it perfectly clear, Apple didn't reinvent the phone with the 12 mini. They didn't revolutionize anything. They aren't first to the small phone market. And for all intents and purposes, this is still the same iPhone we've already had, basically since the iPhone 10. But what they did do is take what people already know and love, shrink it down to a comfortable, compact form factor in order to entice the last few holdouts of the previous generation of iPhones, and in the process still offer their best collection of specs and features, all at a relatively reasonable Apple price. In this video, I'm going to talk about all the things I like about this phone, a couple of the things that I don't, and hopefully by the end, this will help you decide if the 12 mini is right for you. First off, we obviously have to talk about the size and form factor, because that's kind of the whole point of this phone. The iPhone 12 mini is a 5.4-inch iPhone, and in the modern era of iPhones, the post-iPhone 10 world, this is the smallest home buttonless iPhone we've ever gotten. And you absolutely feel that in the hand. This phone feels small. It feels comfortable. It is a pretty drastic change from the iPhones we've been getting. And I have to be honest, when the iPhone 12 mini first launched, I wasn't really sure if it would be that much smaller than like the rest of the iPhone 12s, for example, but it is. It really is small. And it wasn't until I had it in my hand with the regular sized iPhone 12 that I realized that. It's a pretty big difference, and perhaps I've just gotten used to the size of 6-inch iPhones. I'm sure I have, but a lot of people still don't want to take that route. There are a lot of people out there who have these iPhones still. Maybe not the iPhone 5C, but certainly the original SE and everything from the iPhone 6 to the 6S to the 7 to the 8 and this year's 2020 SE. And for those people, I believe this iPhone 12 mini is finally the perfect replacement. In a way, I think the first purpose of this phone is to entice those people to upgrade now. And yes, the screen itself is larger than those phones, so it's a little bit of a stretch and something to get used to. Though for me, you can see it's certainly comfortable with just a thumb. And the lack of a home button nowadays is kind of a downgrade in a way. I wish Apple just threw on Touch ID again with the power button here like they did with the new iPad. It would be the perfect move. But those couple of things aside, the form factor of this 12 mini is as small or even smaller than those phones, and I think that is what makes this an easier transition. Now, what I also realized in using this 12 mini is that while the phone I'm sure will be attractive to those people who like a small phone, who already have small phones and want to just continue to use small phones, it's also attractive to those of us who've forgotten how nice small phones can be. The first thing I unintentionally noticed about the 12 mini was how comfortable it was in my pocket. Even as a guy with big old jean pockets, having a larger hunk of glass and metal can be a little uncomfortable, but this phone is small enough to almost be forgotten about, and I really liked that. Also, while I've obviously gone on and on about how small the mini is, in reality it's not that small, and what I mean by that is the 5.4-inch display is still plenty to work with in whatever it is you're doing. And there's sort of two sides to this. On the one hand, one-handed use is great. Texting one-handed, especially utilizing the swipe keyboard, is really nice, and it makes the phone feel more like a temporary tool at my fingertips rather than this big, huge screen I've suddenly become engulfed by. But at the same time, because the phone is still all screen pretty much, you can absolutely play games fairly comfortably on this thing. For example, your thumbs don't really cover up that much of the action, and there's not much about the size that negatively contributes to your viewing experience. And for people like me, the iPhone 12 mini serves almost as a reminder of sorts that while yeah, big phone screens are great, they aren't necessary. I've certainly gotten used to them. I thought I liked having a big screen, but the 12 mini sort of reignited my interest in embracing something that still just meets my needs but isn't excessive. And like I said, this isn't the first and only small phone out there. There aren't that many, but it's the only iPhone that's small and modern. And after years of having the choice between a rather large display or an outdated design with plenty of compromises, it's nice to finally have a third option, a small form factor and modern design with no compromises. And when I say no compromises, I really do mean no compromises. Yes, this new iPhone 12 mini is now technically Apple's cheapest new phone in the lineup if you ignore the 2020 SE, but in paying less, Apple still gives you everything the more expensive phones have. With the material, this is still the premium aluminum and glass build you'd expect from an Apple product. And personally, while I've gone back and forth on this, I think I've come to actually like the new design with the flat edges and sharper corners. To me, it feels good in the hand. It isn't conforming like the curvy iPhone 11, but the angles still give you some grip. And this to me is the high-end Apple look and feel that I think of. The 12 mini also has the tough ceramic shield front glass, which I haven't tested myself. I'm sure it'll still shatter if I drop it hard enough, but good on Apple for attempting to make it a little tougher. And everything else, from Apple's new MagSafe accessory support to wireless charging to a slightly improved water resistance rating, it's all here. Not a single thing was skipped when it comes to the build and features. This extends to the internal specs too. Of course, the 12 mini gets Apple's newest, fastest A14 Bionic chipset, and there's no real reason to spend too much time on this because yes, it's the fastest, most powerful iPhone, yada, yada, yada. We know this. And paired with iOS 14, it's well optimized to Apple's own standards. There's nothing this iPhone can't do. The only difference inside this 12 mini versus the more expensive 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max is 2 less gigabytes of RAM. This phone gets 4 gigs while the Pro models get 6, but I've been going back and forth between all the new iPhones and I can't tell a difference. Maybe you get a little better app management on the Pros, maybe a super graphics heavy game loads a fraction of a second sooner, but that's about it. It's not a big deal, and the difference in RAM should absolutely not be a deciding factor in your purchase decision. Now, I've sort of talked about the display a couple times already, but there's one more thing I need to mention. OLED. This iPhone 12 mini gets Apple's Super Retina XDR OLED display at a resolution of 2340 by 1080. It technically has the highest pixel density of any iPhone 12 this year, since it's the smallest, about 476 pixels per inch. But the real cause for celebration here is that while in years past, Apple slapped a low resolution LCD display on their quote-unquote cheaper iPhones to separate them from the Pro iPhones, this year they didn't do that. This OLED display is everything you could ask for and more. It's exactly what we've been asking for since the iPhone XR. And with this now, in my opinion, it makes it even harder jumping to the Pro iPhones because it's no longer a feature that separates them. I fully appreciate Apple not cheaping out here with the crappy LCD display. And it's kind of sad that they get praise for this, but so be it. Apple finally made the right decision here. So in all this stuff the 12 mini gets right, there is, I think, one thing that is a little off about this phone, and that has to do with the speaker setup. The 12 mini does have dual stereo sound, just like all the other iPhones. There's one speaker towards the bottom, and the earpiece acts as a secondary one. But what I noticed in having the other iPhone 12s is that as you go up in size, you get an additional speaker grill with the larger phones. The iPhone 12 has one more hole, the iPhone 12 Pro Max has 2 more holes compared to the iPhone 12 mini. This I thought wouldn't be a big deal, but actually I kind of noticed that the bottom speaker on the 12 mini just isn't as loud as I would have liked. It almost feels like now the earpiece is the louder one. And here's a quick sample so maybe you can get an idea. It's a little strange, maybe I'm just being nitpicky here, but I felt like it was kind of noticeable, and it's something that I think was sacrificed because of the size. Now, one thing I and a lot of other people thought for sure would be sacrificed with this iPhone 12 mini is battery life, but that turned out not to be the case at all. The 2020 iPhone SE had just not so great battery life, and in part that was likely due to the size of the phone. It had a small battery inside. The 12 mini also has a pretty small battery too, just a 2227 milliamp capacity, but in real world use, I've found no issues whatsoever with this phone. I've been pushing more than 7 hours of screen on time each day, and sometimes approaching 8 hours, and no, it's not as good as the other iPhone 12s in the lineup. I actually do have a full battery comparison test with all those phones on the channel already if you want to see that in action, but the real takeaway here is that right now it doesn't seem to be an issue. And that's great, because if this phone came out and it did have longevity issues, it would make it really unappealing. But the opposite seems to be true here, and that's a big plus for this mini iPhone. Finally, I just want to touch on the cameras with the 12 mini because, surprise, surprise, this is the same camera setup as the regular iPhone 12 and nearly the same setup as even the 12 Pros, just with one less lens. The 12 mini gets a 12 megapixel main lens and 12 megapixel ultra wide lens. It misses out on the telephoto lens from the Pros, but just like with everything else about this phone, the 12 mini can do nearly anything and everything the more expensive phones can do. And in fact, in real world usage, the picture and video results from this phone are essentially identical to the more expensive iPhone 12s. You get the new features this year, like night mode with the wide angle. For professionals, this phone even supports Dolby Vision HDR at 30 frames per second. I even think this camera setup is a noticeable improvement over the likes of the iPhone 11 last year, having used it quite a bit now. And like I said, the most important thing is simply that it isn't a downgrade. This isn't a step down in comparison to the rest of the lineup. This is the same camera setup, the same hardware, the same features and capabilities, no real compromises. And I feel like I've said it a million times, but that's just a huge selling point for this phone. All in all, I do think it's important to reiterate the fact that the iPhone 12 mini isn't some new breakthrough in the smartphone world, but it is actually something new from Apple, as strange as that may sound. Apple took everything that was great about the iPhone and shrunk it down. They compromised nothing, and compared to last year's iPhone 11, for example, this phone offers way more even. The 12 mini, I feel, will absolutely be the reason those older iPhone users finally make the switch. It's the size they probably like, just in a modern era design. And for longtime iPhone users who've been with these home buttonless ones now for a while, I think some of them will probably switch too. Having a smaller phone is nice. I know I kind of forgot how nice it can be. At this size, with a screen, you don't really give up much at all. I do think the 12 mini is absolutely worth getting, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is the most popular iPhone 12 in the lineup this year. So there you go. Those are all my thoughts on Apple's new iPhone 12 mini. What do you guys think about this phone? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.